President Ibrahim Traoré walked onto the stage in his military uniform. But it wasn't the medals on his chest that gripped the audience. It was his words. With steady eyes and a voice that carried like thunder, he held up a golden banknote for the world to see. "This," he said, "is Afro money. This is the end of begging, the end of foreign control. Today, Africa takes back her soul." The currency was unlike anything seen before. The notes bore the faces of Nelson Mandela, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and Queen Nzinga. The coins were engraved with the image of a lion and a map of Africa, free from colonial borders. Afro money wasn't just paper and metal. It was a declaration of rebirth. The hall erupted in applause. But the real explosion happened far beyond its walls. In Dar es Salaam, Lagos, Accra, and Nairobi, people poured into the streets, shouting into their phones, "He did it. He really did it." In the Caribbean, young men wore t-shirts with Traoré's face beside Marcus Garvey's. In Harlem and Atlanta, African Americans flooded social media, calling Afro money the currency of the ancestors. But behind the celebrations, there was tension. The French ambassador in Ouagadougou left the ceremony early, his face drawn with concern. CNN labeled the move dangerous, warning it was a reckless rejection of economic stability. The U.S. Treasury quickly issued a statement saying it would monitor developments closely. Traoré had expected this storm. He had prepared for it. For months, his team had worked in secret, designing Afro money as a hybrid physical and digital currency. It would use blockchain to block foreign interference and be backed by real African resources. Gold from Burkina Faso, cobalt from the Congo, oil from Nigeria. Within the first hour, over 1 million people downloaded the Afro Money wallet app. The servers crashed twice. The hashtag Afro Money trended in 27 countries. A young Jamaican woman posted a tearful video saying, "My grandmother was beaten for speaking patois instead of English. She died poor. But today I feel like we're rich with dignity." Her video reached 5 million views in a single day. That evening, Traoré stood on the balcony of Unity Hall, gazing over the roaring crowd. His hand tightened on the railing. "I wish Sankara could see this," he murmured. Crowds waved flags and tossed fake euros into the air, shouting, "No more CFA, no more chains." Traoré knew this was only the beginning. Afro money wasn't just a currency, it was a declaration of war. A war against dependency. A war against the invisible shackles that had gripped Africa's hands for generations. But he also knew those chains would not fall without a fight. The idea of Afro money had not come in a flash. It had been born in silence, in frustration, in fire. Years before the launch, Traoré had stood in a dimly lit room with 4 economists, 2 military officers, and 1 elderly man who had survived colonial prisons. The walls were covered with maps of Africa, not the ones children memorized in school, but maps that told a different story. They showed the flow of wealth, dollars in, gold out, euros in, oil out. "This is slavery with paperwork," the old man had said, his trembling finger tapping one of the maps. "They don't need chains anymore. They use banks." That sentence had never left Traoré. He knew speeches could inspire, but they could not free. True independence had to be economic. When Traoré first announced plans to abandon the CFA franc, the currency still under the grip of the French Treasury, foreign advisors quietly warned him to stop. IMF representatives arrived with warm smiles, offering development packages and technical assistance. Some African leaders mocked him behind closed doors, calling him naive. One West African president had even told him, "You'll make noise today and be gone tomorrow. The system is too big." But Traoré had no interest in surviving the system. He intended to break it. In secret, he summoned young African coders and financial minds to Ouagadougou. They came from Kenya, Senegal, South Africa, and from the Diaspora. Together, they toiled night after night on something they called Project Freedom. Farmers, miners, and traders across Burkina Faso were trained to use mobile wallets and blockchain cards. In one small town, an elderly woman who had never owned a bank account bought fertilizer using Afro money, and her fingerprint alone, she wept. holding the receipt like a diploma. Then came the threats. One of the lead developers, a quiet genius from Ghana named Wami, was nearly kidnapped on his way back to his hotel. A black SUV tried to cut him off. He ran barefoot into the bush and hid for 5 long hours before making it safely back to base. Traoré ordered the military. From this moment on, the protection of Afro Money is the protection of the nation. Soldiers began escorting developers. Drones hovered over server facilities. Meetings were moved into underground rooms. But the biggest opposition didn't come from foreign powers. It came from within. One of Traoré's own ministers suddenly resigned, warning that the new currency could make Burkina Faso a target like never before. Instead of collapsing, the movement grew stronger. Young people painted Afro Money murals on building walls. School children learned to use the app. A video from rural Mali went viral, showing a woman shouting, "If this president falls, we all fall. If he stands, we all stand." In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley delivered a surprise address on national television. "We have waited too long to break the chains of foreign currency dependence," she declared. Afro Money is not just an African project. It is a black project. It is a Caribbean project. And we are ready to talk. Cheers erupted across the islands. But not everyone was celebrating. Inside the U.S. State Department, quiet meetings quickly turned into heated debates. If this Afro Money gains traction, one analyst warned, we could see the dollar lose influence across an entire continent. This isn't just political. It's economic warfare. That same week, the Afro Money app was abruptly removed from both the Apple and Google app stores in North America. Developers scrambled to release a mirror version, while social media lit up with hashtags like #LetAfricaTrade and #DigitalColonialism. Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, President Traoré received an unexpected visit from an African-American delegation. Among them was Jordan Blake, a young tech millionaire from Oakland who had sold his startup and moved to Accra. Jordan brought with him a check, not in dollars, but in Bitcoin, worth $5 million. He handed it to Traoré, his voice breaking. "I've made money in Silicon Valley," he said, "but I've never felt wealthy until today. I want this to help Afro Money grow. I want to belong to something bigger than myself, something African." Traoré paused for a moment, then embraced him. "Our ancestors died nameless in foreign lands," he said softly, "but now their children are coming home, with courage, with skills, and with fire in their hearts." But just as hope soared, darkness struck in the city of Bobo Dioulasso. A warehouse storing Afro Money banknotes was set ablaze in the middle of the night. Thick smoke filled the air as soldiers and firefighters battled the flames. 3 men were arrested, all carrying foreign passports. One was found with a badge hidden in his boot. The letters were unmistakable. CIA. The revelation was explosive. Photos leaked online, sparking outrage across Africa. People asked, are they afraid of our money? Are they trying to stop our future? For many, it confirmed what they had long suspected, that the fight was never just about guns or borders, but about freedom itself. Freedom of the mind, freedom of the economy. When dawn broke over the charred remains of the warehouse, President Traoré stood silently among the ashes. He bent down and picked up a scorched note, half-burned, but the face of Thomas Sankara was still visible, holding the half-burned note high. Traoré said just one sentence, "They can burn the paper, but they can't burn the dream." The video spread across the globe in hours, and then something extraordinary began to happen. From remote villages in Ghana, to college dorms in Jamaica, to black churches in Chicago, ordinary people began printing images of Afro Money and hanging them on their walls. Some replaced framed photos of presidents. Others slipped them inside books or taped them above their doors like a blessing of protection. A movement had begun, and there was no turning back. The backlash came harder and faster than anyone had expected. Within 72 hours of the CIA badge scandal, the United States froze multiple aid packages to Burkina Faso. France called for an emergency European Union meeting, pushing for sanctions not only against Traoré's government, but also against any African nation, even considering the adoption of Afro Money. Banks across West Africa began receiving sudden concerns from international partners. Large financial platforms quietly started flagging Afro Money transactions. As suspicious, PayPal accounts were frozen without warning. Visa and MasterCard abruptly withdrew from pilot programs in Burkina Faso. Then came the media offensive. Is Afro Money a scam? Read one bold headline in a major British newspaper. A well-known American economist appeared on live television. Warning, if Africa abandons the dollar and the euro, their economies will collapse. Traoré is playing with fire. But the most surprising reaction came from Asia, and it shook the world. North Korea's foreign ministry issued a short but loaded statement. We support any nation that chooses sovereignty over submission. The Afro Money project is proof. The world is waking up. The comment ignited a global media storm. Western governments panicked, not because of North Korea itself, but because of what Afro Money symbolized, a shift away from Western economic dominance, achieved not through weapons, but through vision. China remains silent. Analysts speculated that Beijing was watching closely, weighing whether to support, sabotage, or simply bide its time. Meanwhile, the Caribbean made its move. In a stunning joint announcement, the prime ministers of St. Lucia, Grenada, and Antigua and Barbuda declared they were forming a digital currency alliance with Burkina Faso to explore regional adoption of Afro Money. The African Union withheld an official endorsement, but several presidents spoke privately and some publicly about their growing interest. In Nigeria, something unprecedented happened. A coalition of youth organizations, fintech innovators, and retired generals signed an open letter to President Bola Tinubu. It read, "Do not stand in the way of Afro Money. The youth are watching. Africa is changing. Either lead or step aside." The letter went viral. Tinubu's government refused to comment. Back in Ouagadougou, pressure was building. Traoré's cabinet was split. Some advisors urged him to pause the Afro Money project to ease mounting international tensions. One diplomat warned, "If we keep pushing, we could be isolated. You'll be blamed if food and fuel shortages come." But Traoré didn't flinch. At a special press conference, he stepped up to the podium and paused. Cameras rolled. The room went silent. Then he spoke. "You fear isolation. I fear betrayal. You fear sanctions. I fear surrender. Afro Money is not a coin. It is a message. We are no longer kneeling." The room erupted in applause. But outside the presidential walls, chaos was stirring. A leaked document appeared online, showing that Western intelligence agencies were tracking Afro Money transactions and had identified key servers for cyberattacks. In the background, a mysterious smear campaign began targeting Traoré's allies. Fake news articles accused his ministers of corruption. A deepfake video surfaced, falsely showing him making anti-Christian remarks. None of it stuck. The people had stopped being so easily fooled. The more they attacked Afro Money, the more popular it became. Then came the most jaw-dropping moment yet. On the New York Stock Exchange floor, traders panicked when rumors spread that Ghana and Senegal were preparing to leave the CFA franc. The African Eurobond market plunged. Bitcoin surged. Afro Money's value, pegged to a basket of African resources, jumped 12% in a single day. The tension reached a boiling point. In the early hours of a humid night, Burkina Faso's central Afro Money server farm in Ouagadougou came under a massive cyber attack. The firewalls held at first. Then, the attackers bypassed an internal security layer using encrypted backdoors to high-level internati. Onal defense systems. Traoré was woken by a secure call from his cybersecurity chief. "Mr. President, this attack is not from freelancers. This is military grade, possibly state-sponsored." He stayed silent for a moment, then spoke calmly. "Move the military." Within 30 minutes, every Afro Money data center in the country was secured by special forces. Internet access was cut in certain government sectors. The attack had failed, barely. That same day, a secret meeting took place inside a luxury hotel in Côte d'Ivoire. Several West African officials, 3 foreign ambassadors, and 2 representatives from global financial institutions were present. A hidden recording of the meeting would later leak. In it, a man with a European accent said, "Traoré must be stopped. If we cannot stop Afro Money, we will lose West Africa." Another voice, African, replied, "We'll create panic, cut trade routes, blame him for every shortage, let his own people turn on him." The video hit social media like a bomb. Hashtag expose the plot and hashtag stand with TRA or EACute exploded across the continent, but the damage was already being felt in Burkina Faso. Shelves began to empty. Oil tankers were blocked at borders. International suppliers went silent. Prices of basic goods doubled. Rumors of famine spread like wildfire. In the capital, a group of paid protesters marched with signs reading, "Stop Afro Money, feed the people." Sharp-eyed citizens noticed something strange. The signs were written in flawless English, and the same faces had appeared at protests in different cities. Within hours, young Afro Money supporters flooded the streets to defend the revolution. They chanted, "We'd rather be hungry and free than fed and enslaved." Old women cooked meals for the youth. Local farmers sold food at half price. Even in the hardest neighborhoods, people shared what little they had. One emotional video showed a blind griot playing the kora while children danced. Afro Money notes pinned to their clothes. He sang, "They want our land, they want our gold, but they fear our mind, and that is why they fear our money." The song went viral. Then came the twist. One of Traoré's most trusted security aides, known only as Captain L, vanished. Hours later, he was caught crossing into Togo with a flash drive containing Afro Money's reserve blueprint. He had been bribed with 5 million euros. When questioned, he broke down. "I believed in Traoré, but they showed me what they would do to my family. I didn't know what else to do." Traoré didn't jail him. Instead, he brought the man before a public council, flanked by elders and youth leaders. In a live broadcast, he said, "Colonialism doesn't always look like a foreign flag. Sometimes it wears our skin and speaks our language, but forgiveness is also our weapon. If you truly regret, then help us build what you almost destroyed." The crowd was silent, then stood and clapped. The sun rose over Ouagadougou on a day history would never forget. A new Afro Money note had just been printed, this one featuring Queen Zinga and Marcus Garvey. Side by side, the colors were rich, bold, and powerful, like the soil of Africa itself. On the back, the words were clear and defiant. "Africa is not poor. She is robbed." Thousands gathered outside the African Unity Hall. They came barefoot and in traditional robes, business suits, and Afrobeat t-shirts. Children waved flags reading "One Africa, One Money." Traoré stepped forward in a plain white tunic, a necklace of cowrie shells, and sandals made from Burkinabe leather. They have tried to crush this movement. They sent hackers, agents, lies, and fear. But what they could not stop was love. Love for our freedom, love for our ancestors, love for our future. Today, Afro Money becomes legal tender in 7 nations. By the end of this year, it will be in 20. We are building an economy based on value, not violence, on unity, not exploitation. The crowd erupted, but the emotion was in the tears. Then came the moment no one expected. A young African-American woman named Zuri walked onto the stage. She had flown from Chicago with just 2 suitcases, a DNA report, and a dream. "My great-grandfather was sold on the coast of Ghana. I was raised thinking I had no home. But Afro Money, this is more than currency. It's my welcome back. It's my healing." She pulled out a folded note of Afro Money. "This is the first time I've ever held money that feels like it's mine." Traoré embraced her. Cameras flashed. The image went viral. The Afro Money app shot to the #1 download spot in over 20 countries. People bypassed restrictions using VPNs, desperate to join what was now being called the Black Renaissance. A wave of Afropreneurs, designers, musicians, farmers, coders began trading exclusively in Afro Money. The New York Times ran the headline, "Can the West Stop Afro Money? Too Late." At the UN, a Caribbean diplomat declared, "Let the world be warned. A new economy is being born. Not from Wall Street, not from Brussels. From Ouagadougou." Threats continued. Trade routes were attacked, supply lines targeted. but the chain had snapped. In schools, children studied Afro Money as their future. In markets, elders scanned QR codes with pride. Across the ocean, in places where African blood had been sold, people began to dream, not of escape, but of return. That night, Traoré stood on the balcony, holding the final note printed that day, the largest denomination, worth €100, bearing the face of Thomas Sankara. I told them we were no longer kneeling. He whispered to the night, "Now we rise." And rise they did, with one passport, one voice, and one money. Afro Money, the currency of freedom, the heartbeat of a continent reborn.